I didn't want to make a designated video for this teeny tiny haul just because it's so small, but I thought I would just show you before we get into today's video what I picked up from a new shop that a viewer recommended. It's in Germany, and I can't remember the name of it. I will link you below. I needed to replenish my Holbein Bright Rose and Opera. These are fugitive colors, and yeah, that's the sad reality of it. These are the 15 milliliter tubes. I guess because these pigments are not very expensive, or yeah, they are fugitive, but I'm guessing the price, because they're not very expensive, is extremely reasonable. But it was also particularly reasonable in this shop. I checked, and on Jackson's, for example, which usually have good prices, it was a lot more expensive. I like double checked that I put in my cart the 15 milliliter tubes and not the 5 milliliter tube, because it was like €6.50 or something per tube, which is incredibly reasonable. I did have to pay shipping, which actually cost like €8, but still with that it was still worth it. Now the one thing I found there, and I had to get it because it was the cutest thing. It was kind of a bit expensive for a stamp. It was €7.50, I think, but I mean, you just gotta love the Japanese craftsmanship. So this is by Holbein, and this is like a self-inking stamp of a watercolor tube. Isn't this the cutest thing you've ever seen? Which made me think that I definitely need a sketch of a watercolor tube in my next stamp set. So that's gonna happen for sure. I'll probably do it a little bit more sketchy than this. This is too organized for my personal taste, and it's a bit small. But yeah, it's adorable, and you know, really great for sketchbooks and yeah, you know, just playing around with your color mixes. Really, really cute. So that's what I got. Let's move on to today's topic, and this is the third installment of What Still Works, not that, in my series. And today we are going to play with some oil pastels. So I am not going to go into like the chemistry of these. Basically what I'm using is what I have in my stash that kind of performs similarly to traditional oil pastels. So I have here my, you know, artist grade oil pastels. Most of these are by Sennelier, and then I have a few Neopastels from Caran, both great. I'm not an oil pastel artist, so I don't have a lot of experience. Don't take my word for, you know, which one you should buy. I can tell you that I think the Sennelier has like some psychotic color range, but it could be also that the Neopastel also have them. I'm not sure. These are a bit softer, and yeah, they just have these really beautiful, beautiful sets. I have the portrait set, and it has lovely colors. The gold I bought separately. I love the gold. And yeah, so we'll try these. And then I have the Vicky Boutin Art Crayons, which are kind of soft, like oil pastels. And then I have this, which I received. This is from Davenport. I don't know if this thing is still available. I received it on a design team assignment. And what I definitely like about these is the packaging. I mean, obviously it's more wasteful, but if you don't like to get messy, these do get messy. Not as messy as the soft pastels, but still. So this one has a nice packaging that kind of keeps your hand less messy. And yeah, I don't know. It's not really my kind of product, but these kind of behave similarly. It actually reminds me that I also have gelatos, but I have used gelatos quite a bit back in the day. You can find ancient videos on my channel. They're cute. The gelatos are water soluble, and I think these are as well. These I don't think they're water solubles, and these are for sure not water solubles. As for gelatos, there are so many videos on them. They're kind of nice, but I would, if you want like a water soluble type of pastel, I really recommend the Neocolor 2 from Caran, which are water soluble. If you're new here, hi, welcome. My name is Irit. I am a watercolor artist, a watercolor and mixed media, but mostly watercolor. And this is the kind of emphasis of these videos, to see which products work well with my watercolors. So if you're looking for, you know, if you're just like an oil pastel artist, I don't do that. I just want to see how they work with watercolors. I love using the Neocolor 1, which are like hard wax pastels that are water resistant. I love using those. I love using pencils, and mainly my issue with these is that they're kind of messy and they leave, you know, like this kind of, that you get a thick application, which, you know, that's the kind of desired effect. These were created by Sennelier for Picasso. So it definitely gives me all the feels of, you know, I'm an artist and you know, I can use the same products that Picasso used, but yeah, I don't, you know, what I like about watercolors is they're so user-friendly, they're so easy, they dry and then you can move on. With these, I guess they cure after some time. I don't know, it's just a little bit messy, but I am coming with an open mind and I will see how I like them. So I'm going to use them kind of to start my sketches, and then I'm going to use them on top of watercolors and see what I like. And I will put links to everything below, as well as timestamps, so you can just skip ahead to the parts that are most interesting to you. Let's get started. Okay, let's get started. Now, the way that I see it is that you can use something like oil pastels in two main ways. One would be before you apply watercolors, and the other one would be after you apply watercolors. And I will try to explain to you why I do the things that I do, so that you can understand if, you know, you would feel the same way as I do, or if these products would work for you. If they don't work for me, it doesn't mean that they are bad products. It just means that, you know, they don't work for me, or they are not what I enjoy or prefer in my art supplies. So one of the ways that I like to use pastels, or, you know, wax pastels usually, here it'll be oil pastels, is to create a resist. Now, some of you may ask, why not just add the oil pastels after you paint with watercolors? And I'll explain that to you, and it's the same reason that I love using wax pastels so much, because sketching a flower first and creating certain areas for different, let's say, petals. My flowers are very loose and abstract, but they still have kind of, you know, you can imagine that there are different petals to a flower. So creating that resist allows me to play with color mixes and then apply slightly different variations of my mixes to those petals, which, if you don't have any kind of resistor, anything that really sections your flower, then you either have to make sure that there are like dry areas between each petal, which a lot of artists do that. You know, they paint like one petal at a time. You know, or everything will just flow into each other. And that is what happened to me so many times and made just kind of a mess. And that is probably the main reason that I love starting with a wax pastel for that resist, so that I have like sections to work with and I can play with my color mixes. You know, I usually paint kind of corally pink, violet flowers. That's my jam. That's my happy place. And so this allows me to put, for example, in the center of my flower, lighter colors, more kind of yellowy, orangey, corally ones. And then in the petals outside the flower, I go more into the deep pinks or violets. So this is for me one of the main reasons to use a wax pastel or something that will give me that resist. And I'm trying to see if I also enjoy doing that with oil pastels, and if there's basically any advantage to doing that with oil pastels as opposed to wax pastels. So this is the kind of logic behind my use of these. And, you know, you can make your own decisions if this is something that makes sense to you and you think you might. Now let's get into the products that I'm using here. I started with the Vicky Boutin ones, the art crayons, which are water soluble, so they're kind of different from all the other ones. They are okay. Vicky Boutin is a lovely, lovely person. And these products, you know, her art crayons and her other products, they're really nice. If you're a crafter, if you really want to support her, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with these products. And I love her very colorful style of scrapbooking. She mostly does scrapbooking, or exclusively does scrapbooking, I think. I don't really see a reason to buy these art crayons over pretty much any similar product, unless you find, you know, you really love the colors, or you really want to support her, or you find a great deal on these, you know, like in one of those Tuesday mornings shop or something where you can find it for like $1, then maybe. But otherwise, I don't see the need for these. Let's say it like this. Now the Jane Davenport ones, the colorway that I chose, I think there's another colorway of these sets. I think it's meant for faces, and I don't do a ton of faces. The sticks themselves are, you know, you can see they're quite pigmented. I do like the packaging, although it is, as I said, quite wasteful, but definitely a lot less messy. So maybe, you know, if like Sennelier or something came with a set of their own like holders where you could just put the oil pastel in it, maybe I would be interested in something like that. But I think the product itself is okay. The advantage always with like major brands, like let's say Sennelier in this case, is that you have not only great sets that are aimed also, like the Jane Davenport set, you know, I have the portrait set, but I feel it's a lot more, it has like a much more interesting and sophisticated color palette. That's my personal opinion. You don't have to agree. And you have different sets, and you have open stock, and you have different sizes, and you have all the information, pigments and everything, light fastness. If you're using them, you know that they will last you. So again, it's that craft versus artist grade. And I think if you don't want to invest in artist grade, then there are a lot of like craft grade or quality or like student grade brands that, you know, you can usually find them on Amazon or something like this. I think like Jackson with an X, not the shop that I always talk about. I think they have like a lot of oil pastels. And I think usually those will be cheaper than like designer products that have someone's name on it. So yeah, my experience making this video was that, not surprisingly, the artist grade products were just more superior, more enjoyable. I could pick exactly the colors I wanted to, and you know, it's very easy to replace them if you run out, or if you really love a color, you can buy like one of the huge sticks from Sennelier. They have these pastels in different sizes. So I think at the end of the day, if you're an artist, or if you are, you know, you already developed kind of your preferences, your sense of color, I think personally artist grade is the way to go. I think the experience is better, and that's my opinion. And of course, you know, you can make your own decisions and try things and see how you like them. So let's get into now the whole experience of using oil pastels with watercolors. So the Vicky Boutin ones, it's like apples and oranges. It's not a fair comparison. And you can see they are water soluble. It's just a different medium. And as I said, there's like nothing wrong with them. If you really like them and you can find a set for a good price, then, you know, you can try them. I think something like the Dina Wakley, what are they called? Sticks or something that I talked about in the first video in the series are a lot more enjoyable. So between those two, while I love both Dina Wakley and Vicky Boutin, I think the Dina Wakley sticks, scribble sticks, they're called scribble sticks, are a little bit nicer to use, just my opinion, and they are actually harder, which I don't know, I think is an advantage with these like water soluble products. So yeah, the Vicky Boutin ones were just okay for me. The Jane Davenport ones, yeah, nothing to say. Didn't really like them. They are going definitely to the pile of stuff my kids can use. Lily was actually painting with them and really enjoying them. So again, if you can find a set, you like the colors, it's a really, really great price, and you do a lot of like painting with your kids, then there's definitely something to be said for the more, you know, cleaner packaging of the Jane Davenport set. So let's move on now to the artist grade, because I think those are the more kind of the most exciting and the most fun to play with. I know that's how I felt about them. And to create that resist that I often create in my paintings, they definitely worked well. I don't know that I prefer them to my Neocolor One wax pastels. However, after just playing a bit with them, and you'll see kind of close-ups when I get into that, there is something very appealing to me in the look of that kind of oil stick, that heavy application. I think it's very attractive. You know, now I could change my mind like next week, but it does look very, it looks very kind of painterly, and you get that texture, and I think it's just a beautiful contrast to that like flat paper look of watercolors, which I also love, but I think these two together just look really, really beautiful. And so I can definitely see myself using oil pastels after, like as a kind of a finishing touch, because if you're into mixed media, these kind of like very, you know, creamy, soft oil pastels, they're kind of the last step. You can't really, unless you're scratching into them and you want that texture, you know, you want to like scratch into them with a pencil or a stick or something like that, there's not a lot you can do after that. Like you don't want to add something on top of them. You can't really write on them. You can't watercolor on them because they just, the color just washes off, which is a cool effect. And you'll see that later in the video. So they're kind of the last step. However, I definitely see possibilities in my kind of art. And I'll give you an example. If I paint like a loose floral, then I can definitely see myself using like the gold oil pastel from Sennelier, which is just this beautiful shade of gold. It's a very light yellowish but not too orangey kind of gold. So there are many shades of gold. Some are nicer than others, and the Sennelier one is particularly attractive in my own personal opinion. So I can see myself kind of painting the background of a floral piece with this like chunky gold oil pastel, really giving it a very painterly feel. And I think it looks beautiful. The juxtaposition next to the watercolors is really, really lovely. Now, as what I'm doing now is just, you know, watercoloring on that loose floral that I sketched very quickly. And I like this experience of kind of putting down that watery paint and kind of seeing the oil pastel resist it. And there's like no comparison between the, you know, the heavy application and the resist effect of the artist grade oil pastels and the craft grade, like the Jane Davenport one. No comparison. It's just, they really push away the color, and it's just, you know, you can see how intense. I put that blue on purpose. You can see how intense the pigmentation is, and it was just like really, really enjoyable to work with them. Now, if you apply them heavily, they're very soft, the Sennelier oil pastels. You will get a little bit on your brush. By the way, the brush that I'm using is one of my favorites from Tracy Lebenzon. He makes these beautiful, he's in the US, and he makes these gorgeous handmade brushes that look like magic wands. I've been raving about these ever since I got them in October. I use them every single day. When I sit down and paint, those are the ones that I grab, and I have many brushes that I love. These are handmade. They're more expensive than, you know, like mass-produced brushes. I can tell you that I feel they really elevate my experience and make it a lot more enjoyable. And this particular brush, I will write the details below, but it's kind of a medium size, and it has these orange bristles, which just works really, really well for me. They don't hold too much water, so I don't get these huge puddles that I can't control. And you can see that it does come to like this nice point. So it's a great all-rounder kind of workhorse brush if you like to paint on like slightly larger sizes. So because you can get a lot of paint in it, but also fine lines. So this is where it starts to get interesting. And I think like, you know, intuitively, probably most of us would think of using oil pastels like on top of watercolors. It makes sense. And I think it's a beautiful combination. And what I was trying to do is also see, obviously on dry watercolors, it's very easy to apply them. But I wanted to see what happens when I kind of sketch with them into wet watercolor. And that was really, really fun to discover, because you're going to see that what happens is that they just push the watercolor away. And so you can see there's no real mixing here. They just, the watercolor just slides off them, and it's just fun to play with. And it does, I feel it gives you options and possibilities. And if you like to mix mediums, then I think you would enjoy it. What I would do if you are, you know, you paint mostly with watercolors and you want to try something like this, grab one or two colors from Sennelier. I prefer them. They are softer than the Neopastel. You might prefer a harder oil pastel. The Neopastel is still very creamy, but the Sennelier ones are just slightly softer. And, you know, just grab one or two colors that you absolutely, absolutely love, or something, you know, basic, like they actually have a transparent one, or a white one, or, you know, a black one, or gold one, and just give it a try. Don't buy a big set. Don't. Just don't. Don't do as I say, just do as I do. No, the other way around. Anyway, you know the song, but don't do as I do, just do as I say, right? So yeah, here's the gold. The gold is lovely. The conclusions of this were that the Vicky Boutin ones are going to, probably go to my kids. The Jane Davenport definitely going to my kids because they are less messy. And the artist grade ones, the Sennelier and the Caran Neopastels, I will definitely keep on hand. Look at that beautiful combination, those puddles of watercolor next to that painterly soft oil pastel. I love that. I'm a very kind of tactile person. One of my favorite things about watercolor is the texture that you get. And I think this would be just a beautiful combination, a great way to add, for example, gold. I just find it a lot more appealing, the thought of, you know, painting a loose floral in watercolor and then adding some gold sketchy areas with an oil pastel as opposed to bringing in acrylic paint. That's just how I feel right now. It might change, but I'm really glad that I made this video. That was the goal of this whole series, to kind of see which art supplies that are neglected or forgotten in my stash can be really useful to me and work for me now. And that's what I'm trying to do. Sorry about my dry skin. It's winter. That's what happens. I hate hand creams. Sorry about that. My hands will look less crinkly when the weather gets warmer. Anyway, I hope you found this video enjoyable, helpful. If you use oil pastels, let me know in the comments how you like to use them, and I'll see you in another video very soon. Take care. Bye bye.